My name is Lian, and I'll begin my digital story of an ELL profile by describing a grade 2 student and my practicum. So I'll begin with the overview. I'll begin with the student profile of the learner, place them on STEP. Next I'll move into a place where I place them on STEP assessment and then move towards what I found from the assessments and what supports I would provide if the student was in my class. Lastly, I'll review some unanswered questions I have about my student. So Joanna was born in Korea with her mother and father and her 5-year-old brother. Her father still living and working in Korea. Joanna arrived in Canada with her mother and brother 7 months ago and began attending a Catholic elementary school in Toronto, Ontario. Joanna's L1 is Korean, and through initial assessment I was able to gain basic information from her, such as her birthday is November 28th, and on Saturday morning she attends Taekwondo where her mother drives her to her lessons. Some of Joanna's educational history or educational background is she attended kindergarten and grade 1 in Korea and immediately began school in Toronto 7 months ago in a grade 2 classroom. Her favorite subjects are art, math, and science, and she enjoys hands-on experiences of creating and observing experiments. Her least favorite subjects are French and social studies. She attends French every day for 40 minutes along with her peers. The school does not offer ESL in grade 2, but with continued assessment, Joanna should be eligible to attend ESL when it's offered in grade 3. Through conversations with Joanna's teacher, I learned Joanna migrated to Canada for better economical and educational opportunities for her and her family. She described that school in South Korea is very different as the desks were in rows. I began the interview with an initial oral assessment using a selection of questions from pages 10 to 12 of the STEP user guide. This helped in developing Joanna's student profile. Next, I used the elementary TDSB initial assessment materials for English language learners. I used the shopping picture response oral assessment to ask Joanna a series of questions related to 3 pictures. I began with placing the 3 pictures in front of Joanna and pointed to the first one and said, "I see a boy," and followed up with, "What do you see?" Joanna responded with single word answers. Through this assessment, I was able to place Joanna on step 2 of the initial assessment for ELLs, where she is able to understand and respond to simple questions using phrases in English and follow simple instructions. In addition, Joanna was able to talk about familiar events or information about using Korean and short English sentences such as "I see a bee." I used the prompts provided for each picture to ask questions such as, "Who do you see in the picture? What is the child doing? What do you see in the cart?" I received a series of simple answers in English such as flower, baby, shopping market, happy. I pointed to the woman in picture 3 and asked, "What color is she wearing?" Joanna answered purple. Then I placed these 3 pictures out of sequence and said, "Let's make a story. What picture comes first, second, and third?" The pictures were placed in order by Joanna of going to the store, shopping, and paying to go home. I also asked Joanna what would come next to test her prediction skills, and she replied, "They will cook at home." During the initial assessment, Joanna was able to answer some questions about herself, her family, her friends, her interests, and her familiarity with the English language. She was also answered related to her schooling and life back in Korea. Joanna was able to communicate she arrived in Canada on a plane a long time ago, and during recess, her best friend to play with is Kate. When asking Joanna questions, she often responded with, "I don't know," not English, when she didn't know an answer, and required prompts or wait time. As previously mentioned, I would place Joanna on step 2 of her listening and speaking skills, as most of her answers were one word and not that elaborate. If I had to ask her questions in Korean, I'm sure she would provide more elaborate answers with less prompting, as I viewed her interactions with her friends. Joanna is at the early beginner stage of her language development and demonstrates an ability to read common sight words in English and write simple sentences in English when I read with her a simple book. In addition, there are several oral reading writing strategies outlined in STEP that would be useful to support instruction for ELL students and foster a higher level of comfort with students developing their English language. Some specific examples I will highlight are encouraging Joanna to read at home and go to her local library to find books in Korean and English, working with Joanna to place her on a leveled reading program to assist with choosing books appropriate to her language development and interests. In addition, I would use pictures in books to help her better understand what the author is conveying to match the pictures to the words, and always encourage her to look for ways to read. As a teacher in practice, I look for a variety of ways to incorporate different groupings among students, conduct frequent checks for understanding and Joanna, and modify assessments, such as transcribing her oral responses or having her draw a picture to support her oral description. Additional language development skills for Joanna are additional supports and recommendations, such as concrete lessons with manipulatives, so she's able to connect the material to the description, highlighting key vocabulary during a lesson, and placing visuals such as a word wall around the room. Some remaining questions I still have were due to the time constraints of a 25-minute interview, limited observations, so I don't know what her home life is like, how she progressed from the beginning of the year to now in March, and what supports are available to her. What supports does she still require, and what are some additional interests outside of school? What is also her comfort level and performance in other subject areas, and how is she being assessed in other areas, from day-to-day formative assessment to her summative or overall assessment in all subject areas? And remember, every child is unique, and as educators, we need to allow time for student progress.